This episode of One Truth Prevails is brought to you by Parity, not to be confused with Parody, which takes a humorous or satirical stab at a serious subject matter. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is NGS, and welcome back to another episode of One Truth Prevails, the weekly web series where you guys submit questions for me to ramble on for 15 minutes. I did not expect to talk about this subject matter for quite some time. I actually wanted to leave this one on the back burner and really get to the stuff that you guys wanted me to discuss. But considering that this has been a very, very controversial topic in the gaming industry for the past couple of weeks, and since you guys are blowing up my Twitter about this, I decided, might as well get it done. Today on One Truth Prevails, we're going to be talking about video game parity. Now, if you've been in this industry for a couple of years, heck, if you own a current generation system, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Wii U, then I'm pretty sure you've heard the term parity thrown out more than once. But for those who have not really been in the loop, what does parity mean? Well, parity, in very simple terms, means equality. In the terms of gaming, parity means that one version of the game is not superior than another version of the game. If you have a game on PlayStation 4, it is going to run the same on Xbox One. Equality. Equality. And the term equality, for the most part, has been associated as a very positive thing, because who wants people to be inferior or superior to others? Wouldn't it be best if we were all equal at the end of the day? So if equality is such a good thing, then why is it such a big deal when it comes to video games? Why does parity, and just uttering the word parity, cause gamers' spines to shiver? To answer that question, I want to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson when it comes to video game development. I want to take this back to the days of what people consider retro gaming. I'm not really going to focus in on a particular generation, but I want to talk about games as they were released on the Sega Genesis, on the Sega Saturn, the Super Nintendo. You guys get what I'm talking about. So, if memory serves me right, when it came to video game development on multiple systems, a lot of the developers really weren't too shy about making certain versions of the games run better on different platforms. If you had a game that was released on both Super Nintendo and, let's just say, Sega Genesis, more often than not, it would run better on one system than another. If you were a fighting gamer, then you all know the one platform where it was essentially arcade perfect. There were a lot of instances where games ran better on platform X than platform Y. And there were such glaring differences like features and controls that you really got to wonder how a lot of people let developers get away with this stuff. So let's fast forward and make it a bit more recent. Let's talk about 2005 and 2006, the release of PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii. This is where I really think a lot of people focused in on multi-platform game development and why this has been causing such a problem. Because in that time span, that's when I believe a lot of people got really into the gaming industry. They were interested in it on a more media mogul type perspective. They wanted to talk about the things that they felt were wrong in the industry, things that pissed them off. Because back in the day, there really weren't too many outlets for you to discuss your thoughts and opinions on. You had your friends, of course, and you had your family, and then maybe the clerk who sold you the video games. But now, when you could just blurt your thoughts on places like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, it opens up a whole new realm for people to discuss, and in some cases get in contact with the people who made those video games. So with the release of PlayStation 3, it was very, very infamous for that platform to have inferior multiplats. And that was due to the hardware of PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 used a cell architecture which was very different than what a lot of developers were used to. It caused a lot of bottlenecks for developers when they were making their games, and for the most part, that led to multiplats running worse on PlayStation 3 than they did on Xbox 360. And that was really one of the main taglines a lot of the fanboys use. Our games run better on Xbox 360. The games have less glitches on Xbox 360. The games load faster on Xbox 360 than they do on the PS3, where you had to install everything, where you didn't have trophies at the time. There were a lot of reasons why the PlayStation 3 was considered inferior for the first 3 years of its life out on the market. And for a lot of gamers, this was infuriating because they just spent $599 on this platform and they're getting inferior games for the same price. Now, granted, there were some developers out there who, once they learned the hardware very early on, they actually produced better multiplats. One game in particular that I don't think gets a lot of love, which it really should considering how much of a fun game it was Unreal Tournament 3. To my recollection, Unreal Tournament 3 on PS3 gave you the ability to mod the game. So it was more akin to the PC version, whereas on Xbox 360, due to Microsoft's restrictions on the platform, they didn't allow people to put mods in the game. That was something that really had a leg up for the PlayStation 3 gamers than it did for Xbox 360. And as time went on, as the years passed, and more developers actually understood the complicated but rewarding hardware that was Cell, they created better multiplats. Final Fantasy XIII was, I think, one of the really big examples of, hey, we put this game on PS3, it can run well, and it'll run better than the Xbox 360 counterpart. Final Fantasy XIII was originally in development for PlayStation 3 and later ported to 360. And since it was development for PS3, they were utilizing the PlayStation 3's extra horsepower. And with the advent of Blu-ray, they were able to put uncompressed video and audio all on one disc, whereas the 360 was compressed and on 3 discs. And if you were a 360 gamer who didn't have warranty on the system, 3 discs... Ooh, y'all know what happened next. And even leading into the end of the PS3's life cycle, we saw a lot of multiplats become basically equivalent to their Xbox 360 counterpart. It took a while, but there you go, the games were equal for the most part. Now, let's move on to the current generation. PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Wii U. We've gone through an entire generation of social media moguls complaining about inferior hardware. So when they hear that the games are going to be made equal across all platforms, why is it causing such a ruckus? I can attribute the difference to this. When it came to PlayStation 3, you noticed that they weren't gimping the games out of spite. They weren't gimping the games because they wanted to quell fanboys. They were simply inexperienced to the PlayStation 3's hardware. And let's be honest, if you weren't working directly with Sony Computer Entertainment, your multiplat, for the most part, was going to be inferior to the competition. So now, with PlayStation 4 and Xbox 360 having pretty similar specs in terms of their design, they're more akin to the PC, why is gimping now a bigger deal than it was then? Well, because of how this generation started. This generation did not start with the release of PS4 and Xbox One. It started with the unveiling of Xbox One. Xbox One, since inception, has been plagued with controversy out the wazoo, from the DRM debacle to Microsoft's horrific PR at E3 and everything since then. A lot of people really have no incentive to pick up the Xbone, and a lot of people and developers were swayed over to PlayStation. That's why you saw multiplats running better on PS4. Not only was it stronger than Xbox One, but it was more developer-focused and developer-friendly. So we saw better multiplats. We saw games like Wolfenstein run better. We saw games like Assassin's Creed 4 run better. We saw so many games, multiplat games, run better on PS4 than Xbox One. But what happened? Well, Microsoft buckled down. Now, a lot of people like to consider this a conspiracy theory and has no grounds whatsoever. But when Microsoft gets aggressive with video game development, it's not in the way that you're expecting. Whereas Sony and Nintendo, when they get aggressive in video game development, they seek out publishers and developers to help them create their games. Microsoft really likes to, how do I say this? They like to give them more incentive to make the Xbox One version better. And that can go anywhere from timed DLC like the Call of Duty map packs to, well, flat out develop the game for our system, make it better than any other system. I don't care what you have to do. We're going to advertise the game out the wazoo for you. We're going to pay for your marketing, pay for half the development, pay for the entire development. Just make the game better. So that's what happened with Assassin's Creed Unity. That's the really big example of the game running on a parity scale. Assassin's Creed Unity is equal on both PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Both games are running the same resolution, and both games are running the same frame rate. It is very different than Assassin's Creed 4, which ran better on PS4 than Xbox One. And Ubisoft, through coercion or through money or what have you, they didn't feel the need to maximize the full potential of each platform. That's something I think a lot of developers need to understand at the end of the day. These are video game platforms with set hardware. And in some cases, you're going to have to maximize the platform's full potential. And some platforms are going to be stronger, while some platforms are going to be weaker. PlayStation 4 has a good track record of running games at 1080p, 30 FPS, in some cases 60 FPS. It's more like a variable unlocked frame rate, but it's 1080p, 30 FPS. Xbox One has a pretty decent track record of running games sub 1080p, creating these weird resolutions like 792p, 900p, barely making it to 1080p at 30 FPS. And mind you, these aren't just coming from multiplats. These are coming from developers working for Microsoft, making exclusives. So at the end of the day, PlayStation 4 is more powerful than Xbox One, but the developers are intentionally gimping the PlayStation 4 version just to make the Xbox One version and the Xbox fan base happy. And that is the difference between inexperience of one platform and gimping to appease a fan base. That is why everybody is so pissed off about video game parity. They spend their money on this system expecting the best from a developer who's put out great games on the system. And yet, we're running into the situation where because one system is weaker than another, you're not going to get the best value on another system just to appease the fanboys. And where do I stand in this? I'm pretty sure you can tell from this video. I think that if you're a developer, I think you should max out the full potential of all platforms you're developing on. Be it Xbox One and utilizing the wide amount of features on Xbox Live, to PlayStation 4, utilizing its beefier hardware, to Wii U, to utilizing the touchpad. Especially when it comes to the PC games. PC gamers know about this whole parity issue. They know how many times they've been gimped when it comes to developers. I think you guys just need to make your voices heard. You have to not support these developers if they're doing something you don't like. That's why a lot of PC gamers, when they see games that are gimped on the platform, they don't buy it. More often than not, in some cases, they pirate it. They wait for the developer to fix the game. And when a developer puts a game out on PC that is a great port, that utilizes the hardware to its full advantages, they buy it in a heartbeat. Alan Wake, for example. That game came out on 360 a couple years back. They put it on PC. It was a really good port. PC gamers supported it. So you know what? At the end of the day, it all comes down to voting with your wallets. Don't support the things you don't like in gaming. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Post your comments down below. What do you think about video game parity? Is it a big deal at the end of the day? Submit your topics down below on what you want to hear on the next episode. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Links down below in the description box. I'm GS signing out, and as always, one truth prevails.